Believe me, Mordred, if I never felt it necessary to come to this horrible place again, I wouldn't have, Celestia growled.
Yes, I can't imagine most ponies would be interested in social calls around here. I mean, the good curtains aren't even up. But there's no reason we can't at least try.
The abomination quipped.
So, Celestia, how are the folks?
Mordred grinned widely at the question, and the princess sneered in outrage. Twilight noticed the look on her face and blinked in surprise. It was something she never saw on her mentor before. Hatred. She kept quiet as Celestia had requested earlier, but intended to talk to her after they left. Surely, what was about to transpire was going to leave her with even more questions that she wanted to be answered.
I'm sorry. Was it something I said?
You're a monster, Celestia said in disgust.
And here I thought time healed all wounds. And we both know how much time you've had, Celestia. Ah, well. Seems most ponies just can't forgive and forget, can they?
He asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. It was obvious to Twilight now that these two had a history, and the princess never spoke about this freakish alicorn before. She recalled the nervousness and sorrow in Her Majesty's voice from earlier in the day. She spoke of some things she wished she could forget. What exactly happened? The unicorn put it on her mental checklist to ask about later, if the princess would be willing to talk about it. 1,000,000 years could pass, and I still would never forgive you for what you did.
That wounds me deeply, my dear,
Mordred jested, dramatically pausing and pressing a hoof to his chest.
But I digress. I suppose we should skip the small talk and get right down to business, yes?
The sooner I can end this visit, the better. Your very name sickens me, so you can imagine what being in the same room with you again is like. Celestia spat. I'm sure you know why we're here, anyway.
Of course I do. There isn't exactly much for one to do around here except watch the living.
Mordred put a hoof to his chin and continued his ridicule.
Although I'm not exactly what you call dead. Care to try again just for old time's sake, Celestia?
The princess glared. The fiery alicorn shrugged and went back to his rambling.
You were so much more fun before you chained me here. I will admit that there simply aren't any creatures quite as divine and enthusiastic as you once were. But that's to be expected in a place like this.
Celestia cut Mordred off, trying to speed things along. What do you hope to accomplish by corrupting Pinkie Pie's spirit and turning her into a killer? How is she even able to escape this place?
Such a stick in the mud. Anyway, I didn't do a thing to her. When she died, she was quite angry with you and the others,
he said, pointing to Twilight. She shrunk back and averted her gaze.
That anger stayed with her after she moved on, and when spirits are in such a state, complete with feelings of revenge and the like, they come here. She felt betrayed by you all, and can you blame her? It was your negligence and complete disregard for her opinion that led to her getting killed. I'd be pissed too.
But we were friends. It was an accident.
These kinds of things don't really matter in the afterlife. I would be a little more familiar with the subject than you, you know. As far as her getting out of here...
He paused and looked away, extremely annoyed.
I haven't done that either.
Then what's going on? He sighed, frowning.
I honestly have no idea with that one. She's unusual, and if I have to say that, then yeah, there's something extremely wrong.
Celestia's eyes shot wide open. She's been getting out on her own.
I'm afraid so. And whether you believe it or not, that's bad news for the both of us.
How do you mean?
Well, it's obvious how an angry, vengeful, murderous, dream-walking ghost could be bad for you and your little subjects,
Mordred mocked.
but it's not exactly great for me either, which is also make it not great for you. Again.
The royal mare lifted an eyebrow. Explain.
I don't mind being Lord Tartarus. I really don't. But I rule through my immense power and through fear. Even though I'm permanently bound to this place and unable to open the gates thanks to you, unless of course you'd like to undo the spell and we can try and patch things up?
He asked derivatively. Celestia responded with an irritated stare.
No? Well, I tried. Anyway, not all my minions are brutes and imbeciles. If they see that little pink pony is able to make me look like a fool and leave whenever she wants, they may see me as an inept ruler and try to overthrow me.
The princess glared at Mordred and growled under her breath. You're breaking my heart.
Oh, it's not quite that simple. As I was saying, there are some of them that are rather cunning and fairly intelligent. And they've always wanted to get back outside and spread chaos again for a while now. Now, if I was ever freed from my bonds, mark my words, I would open the door and let loose my armies in your world again.
A large toothy grin spread across his face. The smile faded away almost instantaneously.
But if some of the lesser demons figured a way out of here on their own, they'd rampage themselves across Equestria. And I'm not going to let some peons take credit for the work I've been putting into readying my troops. I like my seat. It's rather comfy once you get used to it,
he said, patting the seat of the skull throne behind him.
So yes, only because of the fear I inflict upon these creatures is your home and everything you know and love still even around. Are you willing to put them all at risk just because I make your stomach churn?
After a moment of contemplative silence by the princess and a knowing smirk by Mordred, coupled with his breathing on a hoof and wiping it clean on his coat, she sighed. Fine. What can we do to help? He set his hoof down and blinked at her in disbelief.
You're serious? You haven't thought of it?
If it has anything to do with you in any way, then no, I haven't thought of it, Celestia retorted angrily. Why don't you tell me what you're referring to so we can leave? Mordred rolled his eyes and smirked.
Oh, very well. I know you found my notes long ago and used them to chain me here. Maybe it's time you whipped out that dusty old book again. I'm willing to bet you still have it. You never were to discard antiquity.
How am I supposed to cast the spells on her when she isn't even in the plane of existence? The princess asked. He vanished and reappeared next to Twilight, causing her to jump in surprise. She slinked away as a hoof caressed her cheek.
Not my concern. I just suggest you figure out a way quickly, if not for my sake, but the sake of your precious little followers like this lovely little flower here. Goodness knows you wouldn't want any more misery and death to befall them.
In a burst of magic, he popped himself back to his throne and smiled warily at them. Celestia wrapped a comforting wing around her faithful student and glared at her old enemy. Don't you touch her, she scowled.
Oh, come on. It's not like I infected her with anything. It was just a harmless gesture. If I didn't know any better, I'd detect a hint of jealousy in your voice. Now, you really should be off. You've got a pink nuisance to deal with, Mordred said, waving them away. With a final loathsome look at their host, the mares turned around and began to leave. Oh, And Celestia.
She craned her neck back and glared.
Visit again soon.
He wiggled his eyebrows in mock seduction. Snorting, she turned back and continued her exit with Twilight right beside her. Mordred waved goodbye as they walked away. He chuckled to himself once they were out of sight and burst into flames, vanishing into thin air. As Celestia and Twilight entered one of the closest tunnels that led back to the entrance of Tartarus, she looked at one of the demonic skeletons laying on the ground and got an idea. Glancing over the bones, she spotted 3 of the larger ones and picked them up with her magic. The pair continued ahead, and after about 15 more minutes of walking, they came across the gate that led between the worlds. Reciting the chant from before, the doors open, spewing forth their bright glow. Twilight was at a loss as to where the light came from, considering the cave outside was as black as night. Once they left the wretched world, Celestia sealed the gate again behind them, and lit the room with her horn. They exited the large chamber where the door to the underworld was, and once outside it, the princess marched up to the valiant 3-headed guardian. Cerberus had been scratching behind one of his 6 ears, and set his leg down upon seeing them. Those same ears perked up when 3 large, juicy bones levitated in front of him.
Thank you, Cerberus. Please accept these as a token of my appreciation, the princess said.
With tongues happily sticking out and drooling cascadily, he greedily snatched the bones out of the air and flopped to the ground, gnawing on them hungrily. Satisfied, Celestia pressed on towards the distant mouth of the cave. Twilight watched Cerberus tearing into the bones for a moment before deciding to catch up with her teacher.